What if I told you that a simple act of fasting not only transformed my life, but opened a supernatural door to powerful revelations from Christ that could change yours too? Imagine stepping into a realm where the walls of the ordinary fade away, and you gain insights that redefine your spiritual journey. In my extraordinary near-death experience, I encountered Christ in a way that not only deepened my understanding of fasting but also revealed the incredible impact it has on our prayers, our relationships, and even our spiritual authority. Throughout this journey, I witnessed firsthand the miraculous transformations that occur when we embrace biblical fasting, not merely as a religious obligation but as a divine invitation to partner with heaven itself. Are you ready to discover insights that could empower you to break free from past limitations and deepen your connection with the divine? Stay with me as I share not just my story but also the timeless truths that Jesus revealed to me in that sacred space. This is about more than just fasting. It's about unlocking your potential to create ripples of change that can impact generations to come. You don't want to miss what's coming next. This could be the key to your own spiritual awakening. My name is Lauren Bennett, and I am a 38-year-old former teacher turned counselor in Nashville, Tennessee. What I want to share with you is my near-death experience account of the revelations I received when Christ unveiled the startling reality about fasting. I truly witnessed and underwent something that profoundly transformed my perception of fasting, prayer, and the spiritual world. Before we proceed, I'd love to hear where you're tuning in from. It would be nice to feel more connected, even though we might be far apart. Also, please remember to like and comment on your thoughts regarding this near-death experience account. Let's engage in a fair and open dialogue to learn from one another on this platform. Enjoy the experience. This occurred on March 15, 2024. I was nearing the end of a 7-day juice cleanse, a journey I felt inspired to undertake by a higher power. Fasting has always been a component of my spiritual growth, but this specific cleanse felt unique. There was an inexplicable supernatural weight to it. I recall driving to our community's early morning meditation session at 6 a.m. The roads were empty, and a light drizzle was falling, unusual for Nashville in March. I was listening to devotional music and praying, feeling especially close to the divine presence. I had just turned onto Elm Street when everything shifted. A reckless driver in an SUV ran through a red light at great speed, crashing into the passenger side of my vehicle. The collision was catastrophic. Later, I discovered from medical reports that the accident had resulted in severe internal damage, multiple organ failures, and my heart ceased to function for 18 minutes and 15 seconds. However, what unfolded during those 18 minutes felt more tangible than anything in my 38 years of existence. The transition. Then I heard his voice, Christ. I instantly recognized it was him, even though he had not yet revealed himself. His voice resonated within me. Emily, I have brought you here to unveil what your eyes have not perceived and your ears have not comprehended. At that moment, Christ manifested before me. His appearance was both familiar and breathtakingly different from any artwork I had ever encountered. His presence overwhelmed me. Pure love, authority, and power emanated from him in waves. His eyes conveyed a depth of love and understanding that made me feel completely known and wholly cherished simultaneously. Observe, he instructed, and suddenly, I was shown a series of visions about fasting that would redefine my understanding of this spiritual practice. The first revelation was how fasting influences the spiritual atmosphere. I witnessed how entering into a sincere fast created what resembled a tear or opening in a dark, heavy spiritual veil that enveloped the earth. Through these openings, the illumination and power of heaven could flow more freely. Many of my followers, Christ explained, do not realize the power they can access through fasting. When you fast with a sincere heart, seeking me and my kingdom, you collaborate with heaven in unimaginable ways. He then revealed my own fast that I was in the midst of at the time of the incident. I observed how each day of fasting was forging a clearer and stronger connection between heaven and earth. It was akin to watching a spiritual muscle strengthen with every passing day. I perceived how my prayers during the fast held greater authority and broke through spiritual barriers that would typically take months or years to overcome. Christ then transported me to what he referred to as the chambers of time, where I witnessed countless believers throughout history who had undertaken profound fasts. I saw Noah during his 30-day fast receiving guidance for his great undertaking, but now I could perceive the spiritual dynamics at play. His fasting had genuinely created a space in the spiritual realm where God's glory could manifest in a way that enabled him to receive divine instruction. I beheld David during his periods of fasting and how his dedication had actually repelled dark spiritual forces from entire regions. I saw numerous unknown followers throughout history whose fasts had transformed spiritual climates and altered the course of history in ways they never realized in their lifetimes. Emily, Christ said, I show you these things because my church is approaching a time where grasping the power of fasting will be essential. The challenges ahead cannot be met with ordinary prayer alone. Fasting must reclaim its rightful importance. He then showed me something that profoundly impacted me. I saw how collective fasting, when groups of believers join in fasting, created what resembled spiritual tempests of power. These united fasts generated spiritual momentum, capable of shifting entire environments over cities and nations. I foresaw how, in the times to come, this type of collective fasting would be crucial for breakthroughs in myriad circumstances. But my child, Christ cautioned, not all fasting bears the same significance in the spiritual realm. He showed me various styles of fasting and their ramifications. I saw that fasting performed merely for display or out of religious duty had minimal spiritual effect. However, fasting conducted with humility, true repentance, and a sincere desire to draw closer to God generated powerful spiritual changes. I was then shown something that particularly astonished me. Christ disclosed how fasting influences our spiritual essence, if you will. When we fast, it's as if our spiritual abilities undergo an enhancement. I recognize that long periods of fasting genuinely create new spiritual pathways in individuals, enabling them to function with heightened discernment and spiritual authority even after the fasting period concludes. Many of my followers, Christ clarified, view fasting as a means to persuade me to act. However, fasting is not about convincing me, it's about aligning yourself to collaborate with what I'm already inclined to do. When you fast, you adjust your spiritual frequency to align with heaven's frequency. He then illustrated how fasting influences spiritual battles. I observed believers who were fasting, appearing to be clad in additional layers of spiritual armor. Their prayers during fasting acted like precision spiritual weapons, striking their targets with enhanced accuracy and power. Yet there was also a caution. I witnessed how the adversary particularly targets individuals during fasting because he understands its potency. Protection during fasting is vital, Jesus stressed. Remain under the shelter of my blood and my word. Do not fast relying on your own strength or wisdom. Then Christ revealed the connection between fasting and spiritual authority. I saw how each day of genuine fasting amplified a believer's spiritual authority in prayer and battle. It resembled witnessing someone receive incremental promotions within heaven's ranks. Their words bore more weight in the spiritual realm, and their prayers created a significant impact. Remember, Christ reminded me, this authority is not earned, it is bestowed. Fasting positions you to wield more authority, but the authority itself originates from me. Next, I saw how fasting creates what appeared to be spiritual reservoirs, storehouses of spiritual sustenance that can be drawn upon in future times of need. I observed how individuals who cultivated a lifestyle of regular fasting amassed considerable spiritual reserves that fortified them during trials. One of the most beautiful insights Christ provided was how fasting influences worship. During fasting periods, our worship seemed to emit a unique aroma in heaven. It felt as if the sacrifice involved in fasting infused our prayers and praises with a precious quality, making them especially pleasing to God. When my followers worship while fasting, Christ explained, it produces a unique resonance with heaven's worship. The offering of praise in combination with the sacrifice of fasting is formidable. Then came one of the most sobering revelations. I perceived that we were entering an era where understanding the significance of fasting would be more essential than ever. I foresaw forthcoming challenges that would require God's people to function with spiritual authority accessed only through the synergy of prayer and fasting. The coming times, Jesus warned, will necessitate my people to be spiritually prepared. Fasting is not optional for the battles ahead. It is a crucial weapon of spiritual warfare that must be comprehended and utilized wisely. He showed me how fasting dismantles what looked like dark chains in the spiritual realm. These chains represented various forms of bondage, addictions, generational curses, spiritual oppression. When someone fasts and prays with faith and sincere intentions, these bonds begin to weaken and disintegrate. Then Christ revealed something that moved me deeply. I witnessed how our fasting collaborated with his ongoing work of intercession. When we fast, it's as if we unite with him in his intercessory work in a special manner. I saw how this partnership brought him joy, actual joy, when his children chose to deny themselves to support his divine purposes. Sarah, he said, when my followers fast with sincere hearts, it touches my heart. It's not about earning my affection, you already possess that completely. It's about working alongside my purposes in more profound ways. Jesus then revealed how fasting impacts our spiritual inheritance. As we fast, it's as if we are clearing away obstacles from wells of spiritual legacy, enabling those ancient springs to flow once more. I observed how the fasting of some individuals was genuinely restoring access to spiritual blessings that had been obstructed for generations. He demonstrated how fasting creates what seemed to be spiritual bridges. These bridges appeared to link various aspects of God's work and intentions, establishing pathways for His power to flow. I realized how sometimes our fasting forges connections that God utilizes long after our fasting period ends. Then Jesus shared insights about fasting and spiritual multiplication. When we fast with pure intentions, God often amplifies the spiritual impact beyond our imagination. I witnessed how the faithful fasting of one person could resonate throughout an entire community, producing ripple effects in the spiritual realm that persisted for generations. The spiritual impact of fasting, Jesus clarified, often extends far beyond what you can observe in the physical realm. Occasionally, the greatest results of your fasting will only be revealed in eternity. He then explained how fasting relates to spiritual timing. Sometimes, God calls us to fast not for immediate results, but to prepare us for events He knows are forthcoming. I discerned how fasting fortified individuals spiritually before they even realized they would require that strength. In the coming times, Jesus mentioned, many of my followers will need to learn how to fast proactively, not merely in response to emergencies, but in preparation for what I foresee is coming. I was then instructed on how fasting enhances our spiritual discernment. It's as though fasting fine-tunes our spiritual senses, enabling us to catch heaven's frequency more clearly. I noticed that individuals who fasted regularly exhibited heightened sensitivity to the Holy Spirit's guidance. But perhaps most significantly, Jesus revealed how fasting deepens our closeness with Him. He illustrated how it fosters unique moments of communion that transform individuals from within. Fasting, he said, creates space in your spirit for a greater awareness of my presence. It's not solely about spiritual empowerment, it's about knowing me more intimately. As my time in this divine place neared its end, Jesus imparted one final, essential revelation. He indicated that we are entering periods where comprehending the importance of fasting will be more vital than ever. I recognized how God was calling His people back to foundational fasting practices as a way to prepare for the days to come. Share what you've witnessed, Jesus commanded. Tell them that I am beckoning my church back to foundational fasting. Time is short, and my people need to grasp these truths. Just before everything began to fade, Jesus looked at me with such love and warmth that it felt as if my spirit would explode. Remember, he said, the power isn't in the fasting itself, the power resides in me. Fasting positions you to connect with what I'm already desiring to achieve. The next thing I knew, I was back in my body in the hospital, surrounded by astonished medical personnel. They were stunned by what they were witnessing. Not only had I returned to life after being clinically dead for over 18 minutes, but I had no brain damage or lingering effects from the trauma. The doctors labeled it a miracle, and they were correct, but they didn't realize the full extent of it. Just when I thought God had revealed so much during my first near-death experience, He had an even deeper revelation in store. This occurred 3 months after my initial NDE, during a period of extended fasting and prayer. This time, I was not in an accident. Instead, I experienced what the doctors later termed an unexplained cardiac event while meditating in my bedroom. My heart stopped for 5 minutes and 10 seconds. But in those treasured moments, I once again found myself transported into that familiar realm of radiant light. The instant I entered that space, I understood why God had brought me back, there was more he desired to reveal about fasting. Christ was present, his aura just as overwhelming and beautiful as before. However, this time, his demeanor felt even more personal, like a friend eager to share a cherished secret. "Emma," he said, "I've brought you back to reveal the outcomes of what you've learned." Suddenly, I was shown a sweeping view of the spiritual impact that occurred since I began sharing my insights about fasting. I observed streams of light, those same spiritual channels I had seen before, multiplying across the globe. Each light symbolized someone who began to grasp and practice biblical fasting after hearing what Jesus had revealed to me. "Look," he instructed, and I witnessed lives being transformed. I observed addictions shattering, healing taking place, and relationships mending, all through the united power of prayer and biblical fasting. What moved me most was seeing the profound moments between these individuals and Jesus during their fasts. Each denial of food had created a sacred space for deep connection with him. "Do you understand?" Jesus asked. "What I shared with you wasn't solely for you. It was for my cherished church, my beloved bride. Every truth you've communicated has sown seeds that are now bearing fruit." Then he revealed something that brought me to tears. I saw how every time someone practiced these truths about fasting, it created ripples in the spiritual realm that affected not only their life but also generations to come. These ripples resembled waves of revival, preparing the way for something greater. "The future," Jesus said, "will require my people to operate in levels of spiritual authority they have never before encountered. What I showed you about fasting is not optional, it is vital preparation for what lies ahead." He then unveiled how the collective understanding of fasting was generating a new spiritual dynamic within his church. As more believers began to comprehend and implement biblical fasting, their combined spiritual authority was pushing back darkness in extraordinary ways. "Tell them once more," Jesus instructed, "but this time, convey it with the authority of one who has witnessed the outcomes. Inform them that I'm calling my church back to biblical fasting, not as an obligation but as preparation for the greatest outpouring of my Spirit they have ever experienced." He illustrated how every individual who accepted these truths about fasting became like a spiritual beacon, their light driving back darkness in their families, communities, and nations. However, he stressed again that the power did not lie in fasting itself, but in his faithfulness to honor his children's humble sacrifices. "Remember," Jesus said as my time there began to conclude, "I didn't reveal these truths just for your understanding. I showed them to you so you can help my people grasp them. The time is more urgent than they realize, and my church must be ready." Just before everything dimmed, Jesus gave me one final directive: "Let them know that I am not calling them to fast to earn my love, they already possess it fully. I am inviting them to fast because I wish to entrust them with my power. The darkness is intensifying, but through prayer and fasting, my light within them will shine even brighter." When I returned to my body this second time, I recognized with even greater certainty why God had allowed me to experience these revelations. Every detail he showed me about fasting was not only affirmed in Scripture, it had been validated in the lives of countless believers who had begun to embrace these truths. This second encounter left me with an even stronger conviction: Christ is urging his followers to rediscover the significance of biblical fasting. Not as a way to control God or gain his approval, but as a method of positioning ourselves to collaborate with heaven in these critical times. The question isn't whether Christ is calling us to fast, he undoubtedly is. The real question is, how will we react? Will we heed his call to prepare ourselves through prayer and fasting for what lies ahead? Will we accept this spiritual key he has provided, or will we allow fear and complacency to hold us back? If you're witnessing this, it's not a coincidence. Christ is inviting you into a deeper comprehension of fasting, not as a religious duty, but as a chance for genuine partnership with heaven. Don't allow anything to prevent you from embracing this truth. The spiritual realm is more tangible than anything we can perceive with our physical senses, and through biblical fasting, we can cooperate with heaven in ways that will influence future generations. The time is now. Christ is calling, and he is waiting for his followers to respond.